All right, so now we're going to talk about logistics and execution. This is that third element of a successful event. If we don't have this, we have a great message and bad execution, right? If we have audience obsession, organizational alignment, this is kind of that tactical things that actually make the event happen. When we're thinking about, what do we do once we have the foundation? Once we have audience obsession and organizational alignment, now what do we do? And what we do is we create programming that engages our target audience and contributes to the goals of the organization. So logistics that flow out of audience obsession. Do people take the train or not? Do we book a hotel by the airport? Or do we do it in the suburbs? So these are decisions that a lot of my clients make often. So I have an event that we do often. We were hosting people. We'd fly people into Dallas. This organization paid for people to fly, paid for their hotel. But then these Christian college students would pay for their transportation from the airport to the hotel. And we were out in the suburbs, and the Uber was like $80. And so we found a hotel that cost the same amount right next to Dallas Fort Worth, and they can jump on a shuttle. Because we looked at it through the lens of audience obsession, we said, actually, the other hotel is much more convenient because it's right next to the office for this client. But the audience obsession drove us to make this decision to say, hey, if we have a free shuttle from DFW and someone can spend $0 or $5, this makes a big difference, because $180 for someone that's in college is a really, really big deal. And this is our target audience, and we want these people to be engaged with our organization after they've attended this event. And so that's just it's a small example of kind of saying, hey, this is how we do it. When it comes to logistics and execution, there are so many nitty-gritty things, the details that come with the event. For us to go through all of those, some of those best practices is not something that we can do, but what I want to share is kind of the overarching kind of mentality that you approach them for, and a couple tips and tricks that really make a big difference once you have these things, once you have this language, it's going to make it a lot easier. And so this goes similar to some of the stuff we were saying with organizational alignment. And again, it is super, super simple, right? Define success in advance. Answering this question, this event is successful if. This event is successful if. Probably 70% of the people that I work with do not have an answer to this question, because when you define it, it becomes scary, it becomes real, and failure becomes like very, very evident, right? So it's that if you have 3 targets, if there are 3 targets on the screen, I told you to shoot a rubber band and hit the target, right? But I didn't tell you which target to hit. And you shot it and you hit the thing, be like, hey, did you hit your target? Be like, yeah, totally. I was aiming for the one in the middle, or I was aiming for the one on the left or the right? Oh no, actually I was trying to hit that spider up there, right? That's the way we evaluate events often. We get into that post-event debrief and we're like, did we do what we wanted to do? Well, this is what we did, so that's what we wanted to do, right? It's this self-fulfilling prophecy of success. And it doesn't have to be that way. So if we clearly define this event is successful if we get 50 people to sign up for our newsletter, we get 10 monthly donors, we get X, Y, or Z. And you can base this on some of the know, feel, and do things too. It is intangible, but you can ask. These can actually become measurable by asking survey questions as well. Do you feel more empowered to execute successful events following this conference, right? You could put metrics to some of those things, and that's what we want people to do. Do you know X, Y, and Z? You can ask that in a survey. You can provide some of those quantitative results that people love to have but often shy away from in the beginning of the process. Asking this question, this event is successful if, and then you work backwards. What do we need to do to achieve 100 attendees? How many people would we have to send it out to? How many people have to be on our list? I was working with a client and they're like, oh, we want to host this huge conference, 1,000 people. I was like, just met them. And I was like, okay, sounds awesome. Like, your list must be huge. Like the list of people that you have potentially to come to this. And they're like, oh no, we have 700. Like, 1,000-person conference in Nashville, Tennessee. It's going to cost $1,000 per person for them to go. And you have 700 people on your email list. How about 30? Can we do a conference for 30? Because I think that's kind of where we're at right now. So working backwards and kind of saying, looking at some of those numbers, that's that funnel awareness, right? It's how many people are aware of your organization? How many people deeply believe what you believe? How many people are already telling themselves that story, right? This is actually, it's super simple, but this is one of the best things that you can do when you're thinking through your event. Put yourself in the attendee's shoes. You can do this for programming. You can do this for logistics. You can do this for the things you don't even know to remember. When we think about flow, we want things to flow well, right? When you came in, I was like, hey, you can hang up your coat. The bathroom's in the back, right? There's some water. There's some coffee. Even kind of making a point to meet you at the door, because some of us are from the suburbs, right? Or had never been to this neighborhood, or like, is this the event? I know I'm going to an event planning event, but this is a barber shop and I didn't know I was going to get a haircut today. Like, this idea is like very foreign. Put yourself in the attendee's shoes and answer some of those questions, provide some of that hospitality in advance. Often I will sit down with a blank piece of paper and say, okay, I am so-and-so, I'm at point A. Right? And you can think about that in regards to your marketing or the logistics of someone getting to the venue. Am I driving or coming by train? Oh, would it be good for us to have a sign or a person standing at this corner? Oh no, the sign to this place is really, really big. I can communicate that in the email, right? Okay, I park. How do I know where to park? When I park, where do I walk? How do I know which direction? There's lots of doors. Which door? Oh, okay, let's buy a banner so that we can put it by that door. Or we can communicate this thing. So you just walk through it with kind of the whole process, just kind of saying, all right, like, this is, when I walk in, what am I going to see? Oh, okay, we'll do a registration table right when we come in. Let's give them our branded materials, hand sanitizer, this really cool water bottle. Love that. Wait, that's a lot of stuff. How am I gonna hold it? Oh, we should put it in a tote bag, right? This, I had, again, that really, really big client. They had these really cool branded hats. We were going to the College Football Hall of Fame. They're like, oh, let's make like a kind of college football type hat branded with our logo and give it to people as they're getting on the bus to go to this dinner, this 3-4 hour kind of flowing dinner. And so we handed, it was supposed to be a give. It was supposed to be a good thing. It was supposed to be like this cool piece of swag, right? Like stuff we all get, like stuff everyone gets. Like this idea, they're like, oh, this is great, right? Like, we can give them this hat. So we hand it to them, and then they're going to be at this cocktail reception for 3 hours with this hat. They already did their hair. They've already planned their whole outfit. I was sending off the bus. I wasn't responsible for that part of it. I was just kind of executing the details. And when I finally took the bus to the venue, there were 250 hats just thrown on the floor of the entrance, because they're kind of jerks, because that's the way they are. But they just dumped them, right? And we could have given it to them when they came back, right? Hey, thank you so much, because they're going to take the bus back and they're going to go up to their room. Or we could have given it to them, hey, if you want to wear this tonight and support the X, Y, and Z, grab one on your way out when they go to the room to change. So put yourself in the attendee's shoes. It really helps you solve for those things that you may not think through. Same thing with content. Am I using insider language, right? We all have the curse of knowledge. We understand how this connects to our organization. We understand how this connects to our identity and the story people want to tell themselves. So be like, if I knew nothing about this and I am at point A, what would I need to know to become interested or aware or consider or purchase? And so answering some of those questions before people ask them, right? So putting yourself in the attendee's shoes, it's, again, super simple, but it makes a really, really big difference. I just kind of sit down with a blank piece of paper and just walk through, and I kind of create almost a to-do list of things to go and run down later. Sometimes the natural inclination is to be like, okay, I need a banner. And you go and order the banner. I kind of try to do the whole experience. And then obviously when you have the opportunity, if you can walk the space, do it. Like you just kind of, I literally will walk in and be like, what do I see? What's it going to be like? I did that today before you all came. So here's kind of this is going to be in that PDF. These are some of these questions that you can ask. You can snap a picture of it if you'd like, but what programming will best help you achieve your organizational goals? What programming will best help you engage those we seek to serve? When we think about programming too, the 80-20 rule applies to that as well, right? 80% of your impact is going to come from 20% of your programming. And so there's going to be some sessions that are just going to just land awesome. There's going to be some that are just kind of part of the other 80% that are going to get there. So being aware of what that is and really focusing on, do we put this session before or after lunch? If you want people to remember it, don't put it after lunch. That's the hardest thing that you can do, right? So these decisions that there's pros and cons to everything when we actually put ourselves in the attendee shoes, when we ask some of these questions, understand the 80-20, the decisions that we have to make become a lot more simple. And again, it's broadly applicable. I'll kind of power through these. This is a couple pieces that I think these are catalytic tips. These are things that if you don't have them, it kind of solves for what you don't know, right? So they're small, simple things, but they are huge. First one is an event budget. This idea of having a written budget should not be novel for events, but it often is. Like, you don't have to have this detailed, crazy Excel document that has all these formulas and stuff built out. You can, and if you're doing a really, really big event, that's helpful to have. I will send you all a template. I have a template for a budget that has a bunch of items. It does add up. It does have some of those formulas. It also will kind of have some trigger things. Oh man, I forgot about buses. People have to get to the venue. I've seen $2 million events with no budget. Like, they don't know how much they have to spend. They don't know what they spent it on. And one of my jobs one time was to go and find out, we're trying to track it, how much was spent on audiovisual, how much was spent on food, how much was spent on hotel. And this event had a $500,000 miscellaneous line in the budget that they gave me. I was like, that's 25%. That's a lot. This is a lot of money. Yeah. So having a written budget, updating it as you go, and making decisions based on the budget. Do we have money for this? Is a great question to ask. It's also, if a stakeholder or someone comes in, they're like, hey, you have $5,000 to plan this event, or you have $300 to plan this event, or $1 million, be like, hey, great idea, but that's going to cost. Sure, we can invite more people to your event. Do you have more money? That's what I did for a client for an event that I just had recently. It was We're like, hey, we have 225 people. People are still registering. We're over budget. Do you have more money? They're like, oh yeah, we do. I was like, okay, great. Keep inviting them. But I was like, hey, you all need to shut down your registration because you're at budget. So you can make some of these decisions based on having this written budget. Again, super simple, but everything flows from it. This idea of vendor and venue contract negotiations, couple things on this. You're going to spend knowing and having the right place and the right partners is really, really huge when they think about like venue and food is like the 50% of most wedding budgets. When you're thinking about events, where you hold it, what ability you have to bring in your own food, bring in your own audiovisual, or like do these different things. A lot of people will just like be like, oh, the rental's this much, and forget that there's required caterers that you have to use. And those caterers might have, you're like, oh, I was just going to order Chick-fil-A. It's like, you can't bring in that food. You have to order from them. And so instead of having a $12 meal, your meal's actually $62 because that's what hotels do. So looking at some of your contracts, reading some of that through, understanding it, talk to people who've done it before, but asking some of those questions. This is where we do love helping people as well. 15 minutes of me peeking at a contract or saying, hey, you're going to go do a site visit. That's the type of catalytic services we like to offer because you don't know what you don't know. Couple things. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. So that's huge. So you can ask for discounts. You can ask for some of those things. Hey, do you have a nonprofit rate? Do you have something else? So just a general overview. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. And then if you want to know what to ask for, would love to help, especially when stakes are high, right? When the bigger the number, the more you'd want to like look into getting the right thing. Venue's huge, and some of your kind of big vendors are really necessary. Task management system, again, super simple, but makes a big difference. I'm not going to prescribe one. It's just have one. Like a lot of people will. It's just super, super loosey-goosey. People can use. There's Asana, Monday. There's Basecamp. There's tons of different programs you can use. I like Post-it notes. Like I just fill my wall with Post-it notes. Like it works. It works for me with my system. That's my process, and I manage right now. I'm managing 16 events consecutively that are anywhere from 10 to 300 people. They're happening next week or in a year and a half. So not a super refined system, but having a task management system and clearly defining roles within that and getting kind of the team buy-in, especially when you're doing this collaboration with other people, is really, really huge, especially if you're collaborating with other organizations. If you're used to planning the whole thing and then you are needing to collaborate and divide and conquer, that's where things get having clear ownership and clear outcomes following meetings is one of the best things. Having people kind of do that run through at the end saying, all right, my to-dos are this, my to-dos are this. Finishing the meeting with that, and then actually having a system for you personally to execute on that is really important. 48-hour timeline. This is another thing that makes a world of difference for any event that you're doing, is really kind of mapping out, not minute by minute, but 48 hours leading up to your event. Again, you may not need this if it's something small, 10, 15 people. You make this as detailed as it needs to be. But, I had a pretty compressed 48-hour timeline for this this event in regards to, we were executing a program downtown. We were dropping things off. We were taking kids to youth group, take my kids to school, get the catering. So I mapped it all out so I knew knew what was going to happen. You can't leave it to chance. And so when you're doing these big conferences, figuring out timeline on when key people are coming in, when are we having rehearsal, when do we get the room? So building that really, really detailed plan, especially as it relates to kind of the most crucial people, is really important. This idea of minimum viable product has been like one of the biggest things that I've had within my business. This language is incredibly helpful. Minimum viable product, or MVP, it's the smallest version that runs, right? So smallest version of this event that ran is probably this, right? Like I was hoping to have around this many people, and to be in the audience. I wanted to have the opportunity to film it. We think about things, we want to make them perfect. So we're like, oh, it has to be 1,000-person event. It's like, you could potentially invite the 50 best, and the smallest version could be a gala, or it could be a 50-person cocktail reception, a 50-person mix and mingle or headshot, like thing that you do. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it, but getting to minimum viable product, kind of this website has enough to get launched because we want to get it perfect, right? I've wanted to do this video, do this course for the last 3.5 years. Came up with the content, COVID hit, depression hit, all this other stuff. Now I'm here, right? And it's, you know what? It's not perfect, but we're like, okay, what's minimum viable product? This is minimum viable product. Let's move forward. We can refine, we can fix it, we can make it better. So it's important to know, because you can define this. What's the smallest version of this event that will work? That's really kind of that 80% done piece. Then you're going to spend 80% of your time doing the last 20% of the details. You want to be aware too when you're challenging the minimum viable product. So if there's new suggestions that are made, new things that need to happen, or in some cases, new information that becomes available, if it's challenging the MVP, if it's challenging this kind of your ultimate goal, this is language that will help you do that. We had someone came up to us like 30 seconds before his panel was getting on the stage. And he's like, oh, can we do a slide for this? It's like, we can, but you'd have to stop the people that you just introduced from going to the stage. We'd wait for 2 minutes. So yes, we can do that slide, but this idea is challenging the minimum viable product. Would you like to have it flow better, or would you like to have the slide, right? It was kind of this quick conversation that Caleb got to have and handled masterfully, right? So, but having this language as you're working with stakeholders, working with your team, hey, love that, but I do think it's challenging the minimum viable product. 80-20, we've talked about this at length, but it is really, really helpful language, just focusing in and kind of knowing what's important. And then rocks, pebbles, and sand. I don't know if you've ever seen kind of the analogy. They're talking about, people use different things, talking about time, thinking about programming. When I think about events, I think about rocks, pebbles, and sand. So you have a mason jar, beautifully illustrated by this icon created by Isaac. And you have rocks that you want to put in there, you have pebbles that you want to put in there, and you have sand. And when we're thinking about logistics and execution versus organizational alignment and audience obsession, a lot of the logistical pieces, a lot of these things are sand, but we tend to treat them like rocks. And if we fill up this jar with sand and pebbles first, we may not be able to fit the big rocks in. And so when I think about programming, think about general logistics, and getting to minimum viable product, what's the smallest version of this thing that runs, It's we need to have venue, we need to have food, we need transportation, we need a housing plan, right? And we need content. Okay, those could be our 5 big rocks, right? When someone comes and says, "Hey, I want to see design ideas for the invitation because I want to go to Paper Source and I want to buy some envelopes." You can say, "Yep, this is because you have this language." You could say, "Hey, right now that's kind of sand because actually today what I'd love for you to do is talk to this big donor because we need to get this piece funded, or we need to make a decision on which hotel we're going to go to, which venue we're going to go to." So treating each of the pieces like they are is really helpful. And then also kind of saying, "Hey, kind of sounds like you feel like this is a rock, right? I perceive it as sand. Let's talk about that thing," or be like, "Hey, this is important, but this can come in 2 weeks. Right now, I'm putting these pebbles in, right? This specific programming, this key speaker." So treat rocks like rocks, pebbles like pebbles, and sand, and get the big stuff in first, and then you can add more. Those can filter in. Some of those little touches are some of the best things, but a lot of times people focus so much more on those little touches that they will completely miss the biggest pieces, and that's where you do have great message, bad execution. It's that's when we had that. We were fixing slides and the projector got bumped and it was out of focus for the first 2 hours of the event because we were doing the other things. So that there are trade-offs, and those are the pieces to remember. So any questions on that? Any clarification on any of them? I can kind of scroll back through them just in case. 80/20, minimum viable product, 48-hour timeline, task management system, vendor and venue contract negotiations, and event budget. Again, super simple things, but they really, really make a difference. Any questions? Yeah, the volunteer piece is the constant nonprofit, thorn in the flesh. I think some of the things too. I think sometimes what I've found with some of the events that I'm doing is we would do, actually when I was in college, we do a lot of catering events. So that's what I kind of did to pay for college, and we'd have a lot of kind of staff that we would hire from different firms, and people would come in with different abilities, motivation levels, experience, and work ethics. Were quite varied. One of the things that I'd always do when we started to talk about the logistics was we did get into the why. So I would spend 2 minutes talking about the client, talking about what they're doing, talking about, if it's obviously it's a wedding, but we'll kind of just realign on that. Hey, they've been planning this event for the last year. They're celebrating the launch of this new product. It helps people in this way. All right, here's our tasks, here's our assignments. So I think offering that connection to the role that they're playing, to the larger, this is where we're trying to be in 3, 5, 15 years. Again, kind of in some cases, treating them as an audience, having that lens of audience obsession, and that kind of, you are the type of person who showed up. You're the type of person who said yes. Like, you can even do that in some of your confirmation. Like, your role may seem small, but it is crucial to this. So thank you. And that can be a reminder email rather than just saying, hey, show up by noon. It's thank you so much for showing up at noon. You're awesome. You're making this happen. So volunteers are tough. I think it is. It's the expectations. It's there's those big pieces, but if you treat them like an audience, and I think a little goes a long way, like as far as, the pizza, yep, exactly. Yeah, this is great. But yeah, connecting to that identity is really big.